They laughed at the black woman in training. Then the colonel said, "That's a black viper mark." It was a cold morning when Alicia stepped onto the training grounds, feeling the weight of her decision. She had always wanted to be part of something bigger than herself, something that would challenge her physically and mentally. Joining the military had been a dream, but also a risk. She was fully aware that the road ahead would be tough, especially because she was a black woman in a world where the majority of trainees were white men. She had always been taught that the best way to succeed in life was to prove her worth through hard work and determination, but even so, this felt different. She had never been one to back down from a challenge, and she wasn't about to start now. The air was thick with tension as Alicia joined the other recruits for their first day of training. She quickly realized that many of her fellow trainees had doubts about her ability to keep up. Some of them exchanged looks and whispered among themselves. Their doubt wasn't just about her skill, it was about her being different. She could hear their muffled laughter, their comments that she didn't belong there, but Alicia kept her head down, focusing on what she had come to do. As the days passed, the mockery continued. Some trainees, particularly the ones who had been in the military for a while, openly made fun of her. They told her she wasn't strong enough, fast enough, or tough enough to make it through the grueling boot camp. Alicia didn't show it, but their words stung. They believed that because of her gender and the color of her skin, she couldn't handle the physical and mental demands of military training. But Alicia wasn't here to make friends or win popularity contests. She was here because she had a purpose. She had spent years dreaming of this moment, and she wasn't about to let anyone make her feel small. The mockery only fueled her determination. When the others laughed, she pushed harder. She pushed through every physical test, every obstacle, and every challenge. She was determined to prove them wrong. It wasn't about showing off or being better than anyone else. It was about showing herself that she was capable. The first few weeks of training were incredibly difficult. There were times when Alicia felt like quitting. Her body ached all over, and there were moments when she felt completely exhausted. The training was intense, and every day brought a new challenge. They ran long distances, performed strength exercises, and endured brutal drills. Alicia struggled just like everyone else, but it was different for her. When she was struggling, it felt like the others were waiting for her to fail. Their eyes were always on her, ready to laugh, ready to criticize. But Alicia didn't let that stop her. She had a fire inside her that couldn't be extinguished. She remembered the lessons her grandmother had taught her. "You are as strong as you believe you are," her grandmother used to say. Those words echoed in Alicia's mind every time she felt like giving up. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to thrive. Every drop of sweat, every painful muscle was a reminder that she was stronger than they thought. She could feel her body growing stronger, more capable each day. But it wasn't just her physical strength that was tested, it was her mental toughness. In the military, your mind had to be just as strong as your body. Every day, Alicia had to remind herself that she belonged. She had to block out the whispers and the stares. She had to silence the voice in her head that told her maybe they were right, maybe she didn't belong. And every day, she silenced it. One day, they had a timed obstacle course that tested everything: strength, speed, agility, and endurance. Alicia knew that this would be a key moment. If she performed well, maybe the others would stop doubting her. The course was grueling. There were walls to climb, ropes to scale, and obstacles that seemed impossible to conquer. As Alicia approached the first wall, her heart pounded in her chest. She could see some of her fellow trainees already ahead of her, but she wasn't going to let that discourage her. She grabbed the rope and began to climb. Her arms burned, her legs screamed for relief, but she didn't stop. She focused only on the next step, the next movement. When she finally reached the top of the wall, she looked around. Some of the other recruits had already finished, but Alicia wasn't concerned with them. She was focused on herself. She took a deep breath and continued through the course, using everything she had learned so far. She was slower than the others, but she was steady. She didn't make any mistakes. When she crossed the finish line, she was exhausted, but she had done it. She had completed the obstacle course. As she caught her breath, Alicia noticed that a few of the other trainees were looking at her differently. The whispers had stopped. There were no more laughs. Some of them gave her small nods of recognition, a silent acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she was stronger than they thought. Alicia didn't smile or say anything. She simply nodded back, knowing that this was just the beginning. There were many more challenges ahead, and she wasn't going to let anyone or anything get in her way. Despite the small victories, Alicia still had a long way to go. The mocking didn't stop completely, but it had faded. Now her presence on the training field wasn't something to be laughed at, it was something to be respected. But Alicia didn't care about that. She wasn't here for respect. She was here to prove herself, and she was well on her way to doing just that. Every obstacle, every moment of doubt only pushed her further. The road ahead would be hard, but Alicia was ready. She wasn't just surviving, she was becoming the best version of herself. Alicia woke up before the sun every day. The chill of the early morning air made her bones ache, but she knew that if she wanted to succeed, she needed to keep pushing herself. The mornings in training were the hardest, with early wake-ups, long runs, and exhausting drills that tested every ounce of energy she had left. Some of the other recruits were already out of bed, stretching, preparing for the day ahead, but Alicia had to fight to stay focused. It felt like everyone was always watching her, waiting for her to falter, waiting for her to show weakness. The physical challenges didn't get any easier. Alicia thought she had seen the worst of it during the obstacle course, but she quickly realized there were many more tests to come. Each new challenge seemed designed to break her down, to see if she was strong enough to keep going. And every day she found herself questioning whether she could make it through. But one thing was clear, Alicia wasn't someone who backed down from a fight, not now, not ever. She had come too far to give up. She had always been taught to fight for what she believed in, and she believed in herself. So no matter how tired or sore she was, no matter how many doubts filled her mind, Alicia pushed through. One of the toughest tests came early in the morning, before most recruits were even awake. The instructor led the group of trainees into a cold, muddy field for a series of endurance drills. There were no shortcuts, no room for failure. The goal was to complete the drills as quickly and efficiently as possible. The instructors made it clear that this wasn't just about speed, it was about grit, about showing how much you were willing to endure. Alicia found herself at the back of the pack, but she didn't care. She focused on each step she took, each movement of her body, each breath that filled her lungs. Her legs were aching, her heart was racing, but she kept moving forward. She could hear the others ahead of her, their footsteps getting farther away, but she refused to let that discourage her. This wasn't a race against them, it was a race against herself. She was determined to finish, no matter how long it took. By the time the group reached the end of the course, Alicia was exhausted. She collapsed to the ground, her body aching from head to toe. The other recruits had finished long before her, many of them sitting or chatting as they caught their breath. But Alicia didn't let that bother her. She had done her best. She had pushed her limits, and that was enough. The next challenge came just a few days later, a series of combat training exercises. Alicia was paired up with another recruit, a tall, strong man who had been training for much longer than she had. At first, he seemed confident, almost smug. He was sure that he would easily take her down, just like so many others had done before. But Alicia wasn't intimidated. She had trained for this moment. She had practiced every move, every block, every strike. She was ready. The combat exercises started with simple drills, one-on-one sparring, testing strength, agility, and quick thinking. Alicia knew she had to be careful. Her opponent was bigger and stronger, but she had something he didn't: determination. She watched his every move, waiting for the right moment to strike. He came at her with a powerful swing, but Alicia was quick. She dodged, countered with a well-timed kick, and sent him sprawling to the ground. For a moment it was silent. The instructor looked impressed. Alicia's opponent didn't say a word, but his face showed surprise. He hadn't expected her to be so fast, so skilled. Alicia didn't give him the chance to recover. She moved in, completing the sparring session with a clean, decisive move that left no room for doubt. She had won, not by strength, but by using her mind and her speed. After the combat training, Alicia noticed a shift. The whispers from her fellow recruits were different now. Some of them even approached her, asking for tips or advice. They were no longer laughing at her. They were starting to respect her. They saw her as someone who could handle the challenges, someone who was capable. The change didn't happen overnight, but it was a gradual shift, one small moment at a time. But Alicia didn't get comfortable. She knew that every day in training brought new challenges, new tests. The next big test was a long hike through the woods. The terrain was rough, the hills steep, and the weather unpredictable. It was the kind of test that separated the strong from the weak, the determined from the complacent. Alicia's backpack felt heavier with every step, and her feet started to blister, but she refused to stop. She kept moving one step at a time. The trail was long and winding, and the other recruits began to fall behind. Alicia found herself alone in the middle of the forest, surrounded by trees and the sound of her own breath. But she didn't feel lonely. She felt focused. She was used to this feeling, the feeling of being the only one who believed she could do it. As she climbed higher up the mountain, the air got thinner and the wind grew stronger. Her legs burned with exhaustion, but she kept her eyes on the top of the hill. That was her goal, her destination. She could feel the sweat running down her back and her muscles screamed for relief, but she didn't stop. She pushed through the pain, just like she had done every other day. When she finally reached the top, she took a moment to breathe in the fresh air and look around. The view was breathtaking, and it reminded her why she was here. She wasn't just climbing mountains, she was climbing toward something bigger, something greater. She was climbing toward the woman she knew she could become. By the time Alicia reached the finish line, most of the other recruits were already there, resting and recovering. They had given up before they had reached the peak. But Alicia had kept going because she knew that the only person she had to prove anything to was herself. And as she caught her breath, she realized something. The harder the challenge, the more she wanted to face it. Every time someone doubted her, every time they thought she would fail, it only made her more determined to succeed. The days wore on, and Alicia's strength continued to grow. Her body was becoming more toned, more agile. She moved faster, lifted heavier, and tackled every challenge head-on. But the physical transformation wasn't the only change. Alicia's mindset was shifting, too. She wasn't just training to survive, she was training to thrive. She had a new goal, to prove that she was more than what people saw at first glance. She wasn't just a black woman in a tough military training program, she was a force to be reckoned with. With every passing day, the doubts of the others became less important. She had stopped worrying about their opinions and focused only on her own growth. But there was still a long way to go. The real test was yet to come. As Alicia walked into the training grounds that morning, she felt a new energy coursing through her. The sun was bright, and there was a slight breeze in the air that made it feel like a fresh start. She was no longer the same person who had first arrived at boot camp weeks ago. She had changed, not just in terms of her physical strength, but also in her mindset. She was more confident, more determined. She had begun to realize that her hard work was paying off, and every challenge was just another step toward her goal. The other recruits noticed the change too. It wasn't just in the way she carried herself, but in the way she handled each task. Alicia no longer hesitated or doubted herself. She faced every obstacle with the same quiet intensity that had been building inside her since day one. But what surprised her the most was the shift in the attitudes of some of her peers. The whispers that had once mocked her had slowly begun to fade. In their place, there were words of admiration. The most noticeable change came during a combat training session. Alicia had been paired with a new recruit, a young man who was eager to prove himself. He was big, strong, and confident. At least, that was how he appeared on the surface. As soon as the training began, he charged at Alicia, sure that he could overpower her with sheer strength. But Alicia wasn't intimidated. She stood her ground and waited for the right moment. As he lunged at her, she sidestepped, using his momentum to send him crashing to the ground. He stared up at her in disbelief, his pride bruised. For the first time, the other recruits were silent. Alicia didn't say anything. She simply helped her opponent to his feet, nodded, and moved on to the next exercise. But the respect she earned from that one moment spoke louder than any words could. The young man, who had once been dismissive of her abilities, was now silently acknowledging her skill. Alicia hadn't needed to prove herself with a boast or a declaration. She had let her actions speak for themselves. Even though the training was still incredibly demanding, Alicia was no longer seen as the underdog. She had become a force to be reckoned with. The more she pushed herself, the more her peers began to recognize her strength and resilience. They started to seek her out for advice, for guidance on how to improve their own skills. Alicia's knowledge, gained from months of hard work and determination, was valuable. She wasn't just a participant in the training anymore, she was becoming a leader. Alicia's confidence grew even more when she was chosen to lead a group during a team-building exercise. The challenge was to navigate through a series of obstacles as a team, relying on each other to get through. Alicia was given the responsibility of organizing the group, keeping everyone focused, and ensuring that they worked together. It was a huge test of leadership, and Alicia was ready for it. She took charge immediately, giving clear instructions and offering encouragement when needed. She made sure to listen to the ideas of others and used their strengths to guide the team forward. The exercise was tough, and at times, it felt like they might not make it. But Alicia's leadership kept everyone moving. When they finally reached the finish line, the entire group was exhausted but triumphant. They had worked together and they had succeeded. Alicia had proven to herself and to everyone else that she could lead with confidence. It wasn't just about being strong physically. It was about being strong mentally, emotionally, and strategically. The respect Alicia had gained wasn't just from her peers, it also came from the instructors. They had been watching her closely, noticing how she handled every challenge with grace and determination. During a briefing at the end of the day, one of the senior instructors called her forward. "Alicia," he said, "you've shown that you have what it takes to be more than just a recruit. You've demonstrated leadership, strength, and the ability to inspire those around you. Keep up the good work." Her heart swelled with pride, but she didn't let it go to her head. She knew that she still had a long way to go and that there were many more challenges ahead. But the acknowledgement from the instructors meant something to her. It wasn't just praise, it was recognition of her growth, of everything she had fought for. It was the validation she needed to continue pushing forward. As the days passed, Alicia continued to challenge herself. She worked harder, trained longer, and took on every new task with determination. But she also began to help others along the way. When one of the recruits struggled with a particular drill, Alicia would step in, offering guidance and support. She wasn't just focused on her own success anymore. She was focused on lifting others up as well. Her growth had allowed her to see that success wasn't just about proving herself. It was about helping others achieve their potential too. One evening, after a particularly intense training session, Alicia sat on a bench outside, looking up at the stars. She felt the weight of the day's exhaustion in her muscles, but she also felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had come a long way from the woman who had first arrived at boot camp, unsure of herself and uncertain about her place in the world. Now she was confident and strong, and she knew she could face anything that came her way. She was no longer just trying to prove herself to others. She had proven to herself that she was capable of achieving greatness. The challenges she had faced had tested her, pushed her to her limits, and forced her to grow in ways she had never imagined. But with each new test, she had only become stronger, more resilient, and more capable of leading others. And even though the road ahead was still long, Alicia knew that she was on the right path. She was becoming the woman she had always dreamed of being, and nothing was going to stop her now. The air was heavy with anticipation as Alicia and her fellow trainees lined up for the day's challenge. It was a routine drill, but today felt different. There was something in the air, a sense of expectation, a feeling that today was going to be more important than any of the others. Alicia could feel it in her bones as she stood in line, trying to focus, trying to block out the nerves that always came before a big test. The task for the day was one of the most difficult, a high-intensity obstacle course that required not only strength and endurance, but also strategy and teamwork. The recruits had been training for this moment for weeks, learning how to navigate rough terrain, scale walls, crawl through narrow tunnels, and make split-second decisions that could mean the difference between success and failure. Alicia had been through this before, but today was different. She had proven herself in the past, but she knew that this challenge was her chance to show everyone, once and for all, that she belonged here. This wasn't just about completing the course. It was about showing that she had the strength, the skill, and the mental toughness to keep pushing through no matter what. The drill began, and Alicia moved quickly, taking each obstacle with confidence. She climbed over walls, crawled through the mud, and sprinted from one checkpoint to the next. But as the course wore on, she could feel her body beginning to tire. Her legs ached, and her lungs burned with every breath she took. She had pushed herself this far before, but this was different. The fatigue felt deeper, more overwhelming than anything she had experienced in training. For a brief moment, doubt crept into her mind. But then, she remembered the lessons she had learned. She thought about the challenges she had faced in the past, about the obstacles she had overcome. She wasn't going to let fatigue defeat her. Not now. She pushed through, one step at a time, focusing on the next move, the next obstacle. Slowly, the pain in her body began to fade as the adrenaline kicked in. She could do this. She was going to finish. As Alicia neared the final stretch of the course, she could see that the other recruits had already finished. Some were cheering, some were sitting on the ground, catching their breath. But Alicia wasn't concerned with them. She was focused on the finish line ahead, the goal that was just within reach. She reached the final wall, a towering obstacle that had tripped up many of the recruits before her. It was the last challenge, and she could feel the weight of it. This was the moment that would decide everything. She had to get over this wall. She crouched down, took a deep breath, and then she sprang upward, using every ounce of strength she had left. Her hands gripped the top of the wall, and with one final push, she pulled herself over. When Alicia landed on the other side, her body was trembling with exhaustion, but she had done it. She had finished the course. Her heart raced in her chest as she took a few moments to catch her breath, feeling a mix of relief and accomplishment. She had made it. As Alicia stood there, recovering, she noticed something strange. The other recruits were quiet. They weren't talking or laughing like they usually did after a tough challenge. They were all looking toward the front of the group, where the colonel stood, arms crossed, watching her with a serious expression on his face. The colonel was a man of few words, but when he did speak, his voice commanded attention. He had been watching Alicia for some time now, and today, as she crossed the finish line, he had seen something in her. As the recruits gathered around, the colonel stepped forward, his eyes fixed on Alicia. "Ladies and gentlemen," the colonel said, his voice carrying across the field, "I've been watching each of you closely throughout this training, but I've seen something today that I haven't seen in a long time. I've seen the heart of a true soldier. Alicia, you've earned my respect." Alicia's heart skipped a beat. The colonel was known for his tough demeanor and for never giving compliments easily. To hear him speak those words to her in front of the group was nothing short of a victory. The other recruits stared at her in shock, some nodding in silent approval. They had all witnessed her struggle, but they had also seen her rise above it. "Alicia," the colonel continued, his voice firm but proud, "you've demonstrated strength, resilience, and leadership. From now on, I want everyone to know that when I see someone with the determination you've shown today, I call it a black viper mark." The words hit Alicia like a wave. Black viper mark was a term used to describe someone who was exceptional, someone who stood out from the rest. It was a mark of distinction, a sign that someone had achieved something beyond the ordinary, something extraordinary. Alicia couldn't believe what she had just heard. The colonel's words were more than just praise, they were a symbol of everything she had worked for. The other recruits stood in silence, some with their jaws hanging open, others nodding in agreement. Alicia had earned the respect of the toughest instructor in the camp, and she had earned it through her grit, her determination, and her ability to rise above the obstacles in her way. For the first time since she had arrived at boot camp, Alicia felt a sense of pride that was deeper than anything she had ever experienced. She wasn't just proving herself to the other recruits anymore. She was proving to herself that she was capable of achieving greatness. She had earned her place here, and nothing could take that away from her. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Alicia's mind was racing, replaying the colonel's words over and over. "That's a black viper mark." It felt surreal, but it also felt right. She had worked hard for this moment, and she had earned every bit of it. The challenges she had faced, the mockery she had endured, all of it had led her to this point. She had proved them all wrong. She had shown that she belonged here. As she walked back to the barracks that evening, Alicia couldn't help but smile. She knew there was still a long way to go, and that the journey ahead would only get tougher. But for the first time, she felt like she had truly found her place. She was no longer the woman who had been laughed at. She was the woman who had earned the Black Viper mark. And that, in itself, was more than enough. The next few weeks flew by in a whirlwind of training exercises, teamwork challenges, and personal growth. Alicia's reputation had been solidified. No longer just a recruit, she had become someone the others looked up to. It wasn't just about her physical strength anymore. It was about her mental resilience, her ability to face obstacles head-on, and her willingness to help those around her. The Black Viper mark wasn't just a title. It had become a symbol of what Alicia had accomplished and who she had become. Every morning, when Alicia arrived at the training field, she felt a new sense of purpose. She wasn't just going through the motions anymore. She was here to lead, to help the others push past their limits, and to show them that no matter how tough things got, they could make it through together. The instructors had noticed the shift in Alicia. They saw her potential not just as a soldier, but as a leader, and they began to give her more responsibilities. One day, the colonel pulled Alicia aside. He had been watching her for some time, and he had seen something in her that set her apart from the rest. "Alicia," he said, "you've demonstrated that you can handle the physical side of this training, but I've also seen how you inspire the others. I think it's time for you to take on a leadership role." Alicia was taken aback. She had never expected this. She had always thought of herself as just one of the recruits doing what needed to be done. But now, the colonel was asking her to lead. It was a huge responsibility, and for a moment she wasn't sure she was ready. But then she remembered everything she had been through, the struggles, the challenges, the times she had pushed herself when others thought she couldn't. She had earned this. "I'm ready, sir," Alicia replied, her voice steady but full of determination. The colonel gave her a nod. "Good, I'm assigning you to lead the next training mission. You'll be responsible for organizing the team, delegating tasks, and making sure everyone stays focused." Alicia took a deep breath as she accepted the challenge. It wasn't just about completing the mission. It was about guiding the others, helping them see that they, too, could achieve greatness. The mission was set for the following week, and Alicia knew she had a lot of preparation to do. The day of the mission arrived, and Alicia was ready. The recruits had been briefed on the objectives, but Alicia knew that her role was bigger than just overseeing the drills. She needed to make sure everyone was working together, that everyone felt like a vital part of the team. She could see some of the familiar faces from the early days, those who had once doubted her, who had thought she couldn't handle the training. But now they were looking to her for guidance. Alicia stood at the front of the group, giving clear instructions. She was calm, composed, and confident in her leadership. She knew that if she faltered, the others would lose faith, but Alicia had grown. She had faced worse, and this was just another challenge to overcome. She broke the team into smaller groups, assigning each recruit a specific task based on their strengths. She made sure to check in with everyone, ensuring they felt prepared and motivated. As the mission unfolded, Alicia's leadership skills shone. She didn't just command, she communicated. She was always present, offering support and encouragement when needed. She made sure no one was left behind, even when the task seemed overwhelming. She didn't hesitate to jump in and lend a hand when a recruit struggled. By the end of the mission, the team had accomplished their goal and they had done it together. Alicia felt a sense of pride not just for herself, but for the entire group. They had proven that they could rely on each other, and Alicia had helped them get there. After the mission, the colonel called Alicia over. He had been watching her closely throughout the exercise, and he was impressed with her performance. "Alicia, you did well today," he said. "You've shown that you have what it takes to lead. You don't just lead with strength, you lead with your heart. Keep that up." Alicia smiled, but she didn't let the praise go to her head. She knew that leadership wasn't about receiving recognition. It was about helping others reach their potential. It was about inspiring the team to believe in themselves, even when the odds were stacked against them. And today, she had done just that. As the weeks continued, Alicia's role as a leader grew. She was given more opportunities to lead missions, organize training exercises, and mentor new recruits. With each new responsibility, Alicia felt more confident in her abilities. She wasn't just the black woman in training anymore. She was a leader, someone who had earned her place through hard work, resilience, and determination. Her fellow recruits began to see her in a new light. The respect they had once quietly acknowledged now became a loud and clear recognition of her leadership. When Alicia spoke, they listened. When she gave instructions, they followed. She had earned their trust, and with that trust came a sense of responsibility. Alicia didn't take that responsibility lightly. She knew that leadership wasn't about being in charge. It was about making sure everyone had a chance to succeed, to be their best selves. One afternoon, during a rare break in training, Alicia found herself sitting alone outside, reflecting on how far she had come. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been moments when she doubted herself, moments when she had questioned whether she was truly cut out for this. But as she looked back on all the challenges she had faced, she realized something. The struggle had shaped her. It had forged her into the leader she had become. Alicia's thoughts were interrupted by one of the recruits, a young woman who had recently joined the training program. She had been watching Alicia from a distance, and now she approached her. "Alicia," she said hesitantly, "I just wanted to say thank you. You've inspired me. When I first got here, I didn't think I could make it." But seeing how you handle everything, how you lead with strength and kindness, it's made me believe in myself." Alicia smiled warmly. "You've got this," she said. "We all have the strength to push through. It's about finding that strength within yourself." The young woman nodded, a look of determination in her eyes. Alicia knew that she had made a difference. She had become a role model, not just for the recruits, but for herself. She had become the leader she had always wanted to be. And as she watched the young woman walk away, Alicia felt a deep sense of pride. She had made it. She had started as someone the others doubted, someone who faced ridicule and challenges every day. But now she was a leader, someone who had earned the respect and admiration of her peers. It had been a long road, but Alicia knew she had only just begun. The journey ahead would still be tough, but Alicia was ready. She had found her place, not just as a recruit, but as a leader. And nothing, not even the hardest challenges, could take that away from her. The days passed, and Alicia's reputation continued to grow. No longer just a recruit or even a leader among her peers, she had become a symbol of perseverance. Her journey from being doubted and underestimated to becoming a role model and a trusted leader was more than just an accomplishment. It was a legacy in the making. The other recruits looked to her not just for leadership, but for inspiration. Alicia had proven that with hard work, determination, and an unshakable belief in oneself, anyone could rise above the odds. Alicia's next big challenge came when she was selected to lead an advanced training mission. This mission was different from the others. It was designed to test the limits of every recruit involved. The tasks were complex, and the stakes were higher than ever. It was a mission that required not only the ability to perform under pressure, but also the ability to make quick decisions, to think on her feet, and to keep her team together when things got tough. This was her moment to prove everything she had learned so far. She gathered her team, a mix of experienced recruits and newcomers. Alicia could sense their anxiety, the weight of the mission hanging over them. She knew they were looking to her for guidance, for the calmness and confidence that had defined her journey so far. Alicia didn't falter. She stood before them, taking a deep breath, and with a steady voice, she gave her first order. "We've trained for this. We know what to do. Let's show them what we're made of." The mission was tough from the start. The terrain was difficult, the obstacles more challenging than anything Alicia had encountered before. But she didn't back down. She led her team through each task, checking in on everyone, making sure no one was left behind. There were moments when the team faltered, when fatigue set in and the path ahead seemed impossible, but Alicia remained calm. She was the anchor, the steady hand guiding them through. She didn't just lead with authority, she led with empathy. She made sure everyone felt heard, everyone felt supported. When a recruit stumbled, Alicia was there, offering a hand and encouraging them to keep going. When someone needed a break, she knew when to push them and when to let them rest. The team was growing stronger, not just because of Alicia's leadership, but because of the trust she had built with each of them. They weren't just following her orders, they were following her example. Her belief in their abilities had become their belief in themselves. And that was the key to their success. They weren't just a group of individuals anymore, they were a team, bound together by their shared purpose. As the mission progressed, they reached the final stage, an intense challenge that required every ounce of strength, strategy, and teamwork. The stakes had never been higher, and Alicia could feel the weight of responsibility bearing down on her. But she didn't let that pressure affect her. She focused on the task at hand, one step at a time. She trusted her team, and more importantly, they trusted her. Together, they pushed through the final stretch, working in sync, overcoming every obstacle that came their way. When they crossed the finish line, exhaustion swept over them all, but there was also a sense of triumph. They had completed the mission, and they had done it together. Alicia stood at the front of the group, watching as her team celebrated their success. She felt a deep sense of pride, not just for herself, but for the entire group. They had proven that they could accomplish anything, as long as they worked together and supported one another. The colonel, who had been observing from a distance, approached Alicia after the mission. His stern face softened as he looked at her. "You did well, Alicia," he said. "I knew from the moment I saw you that you had something special. Today, you showed me that you are not just a leader. You are a mentor, a guide, and someone who can inspire others to be their best. You've earned your place here, and you've earned the respect of everyone around you." Alicia smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment that words couldn't fully capture. She had started this journey with so many doubts, so many questions about her place in the world, but now she had found it. She was no longer the woman who had struggled to fit in. She was the woman who had helped others find their strength, their purpose, and their own path to success. Later that evening, as the recruits gathered around the fire for their usual debrief, Alicia found herself reflecting on how far she had come. It wasn't just about the missions or the accolades. It was about the relationships she had built, the trust she had earned, and the impact she had made. Alicia had become a leader, not just by demonstrating skill, but by showing kindness, by believing in others when they couldn't believe in themselves. She had created a legacy that would live on long after the training was over. As the fire flickered and the recruits shared their thoughts on the mission, Alicia listened. She didn't need to speak for them to know how much they valued her leadership. She had already left her mark. But as she sat there, surrounded by the people she had led, she realized something else. This wasn't the end. The journey wasn't over. There would always be more challenges to face, more obstacles to overcome. But Alicia was no longer just a recruit. She was a leader, and she was ready for whatever came next. When the night finally settled and the recruits headed to their barracks, Alicia stayed behind for a moment, looking up at the stars. The night felt calm, peaceful, almost surreal. She had earned her place here, and she knew that her journey had only just begun. She wasn't just training to be a soldier. She was training to leave a legacy of strength, perseverance, and leadership. As Alicia turned to head back to the barracks, she felt a sense of peace. She had faced every challenge, every obstacle, and had come out stronger. She had earned the respect of her peers, the admiration of her instructors, and the trust of everyone who had worked alongside her. But most importantly, she had earned her own respect. She had proven that she was capable of more than she ever thought possible. And with that, she knew she had accomplished what she had set out to do. Alicia had become more than just a recruit. She had become a leader, someone who would inspire others for years to come.